Okay, guys, good evening. Don't forget to turn your cameras on. Okay. So today we're going to continue working on the speaking section, but we are going to be starting a new question. Okay, does anyone remember how many questions we had in the speaking section?
There are like 4, maybe?
Exactly. We have 4 questions in the speaking section. These past few days, we've been working on question 1 of the speaking section, which is the independent task, where we said they ask you your opinion about a topic, right? They ask your preference, whether you agree or disagree with something, whether you think that something's a good idea or not, that type of thing. And we had very everyday, simple topics, things like work, education, technology, and so forth. Now we're going to be moving on to the integrated questions, and we're going to start with question 2, the first integrated task, the second question of the speaking section. Remember, integrated means that you will have to have more than just a good speaking. You need to have good listening comprehension and reading comprehension as well, because you're going to integrate those skills. So let's start working on question 2 of the speaking section. Do you guys have any questions before we start? Okay. Well, in that case, let's get to question 2. We're going to call this the university question, okay? Because it's about university life. You need some vocabulary related to university life here, I'm not gonna lie. But to be honest, I would say it's pretty simple, one of the simplest ones. So let's get to it. What will you guys have to do for question 2 of the speaking section? Pretty simple. First thing that you guys are going to do is read. You will have to read a letter or a short text, for which you will have 45 seconds. Okay, guys? So you first are going to read a short text for 45 seconds. Then after the 45 seconds are over, you guys will have to hear a conversation, listen to an audio file, hear a conversation, or you're going to hear 2 students talking about this letter. This conversation is about 1 minute long. You hear it, you take notes, because you only get to listen to this conversation once, and then you will get the question. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds for you to prepare your response, and 1 minute or 60 seconds to answer the question or to speak. Okay, guys? So, is this okay so far? First, you read a text for 45 seconds, you hear a conversation, and then you get 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute to speak. That okay? Any questions so far? Okay, guys. So I'm going to show you an example of how this question is, how this question looks like, how it will appear on your screen, what you will see, what you will hear. It's important that you guys are prepared exactly for what you will have in your test. So please, let's watch this video. It's an example. See.
In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. The university is making a change in the courses it will offer. Read the article from the university newspaper about the change. You will have 45 seconds to read the article. Begin reading now. The article. Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Everything all right?
Okay, guys. So as you can see, first you get the instructions. In the instructions, they tell you that you will have to first read a short text about the university situation. They show you the text and they give you the timer for 45 seconds. After the 45 seconds are over, they play the conversation. And when you're hearing the conversation, you can just see a picture. There's a picture on the screen. You hear the conversation, you take your notes, and then this will happen.
The woman expresses her opinion of the university's plan. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion.
Begin to prepare your response after the beep. Begin speaking after the beep.
Okay, so then you get the question, then they will give you 30 seconds to prepare. They obviously show you a timer. They tell you when to start preparing. Begin preparing your response after the beep. You hear the beep, you start preparing, you get 30 seconds, and then they tell you to start speaking. You hear another beep and you get another timer for 1 minute. And that's when you have to start speaking. They will be recording what you say and what you do during that 1 minute. So you got to speak confidently, fluently, loudly, and then that's it, right? The question is over, they move on to the next. Is that okay so far? Do you guys have any questions now in terms of content, in terms of the format of the question mostly? No? Okay, guys. So if you don't have questions, let's start by looking at an example. We'll be doing the same example as we had in the video. This is the text. Technically, you will have 45 seconds to read, but now we're going to first read it on, somebody's gonna read it for us. So any volunteers? Somebody please read the text.
Okay, can I read?
Yes, of course, thank you, Noelia.
Sculpture courses to be discontinued. University administrators announced yesterday that the sculpture program, a division of the art department, will be eliminated. The main reason is a lack of student interest, reported one administrator. Also, the number of art students has increased. Fewer and fewer art majors are taking sculpture classes. Furthermore, the department only sculpture professor is retired this year, given the art department's limited budget. The administrator explained, "I just doesn't make sense to hire a new full-time professor to teach sculpture for only a handful of students."
Okay, thank you, Noelia. All right. So what is this text? What do you think this is about? This is an announcement, okay? This is a letter, an announcement written by the university. It doesn't matter. You just need to think that it's an American university that wrote this letter. So this university, the administrator wrote this letter in order to announce what? Announce a change. there's something happening in the university, and there's always going to be a change happening in the university. So when you guys read, the first and the most important thing that you guys need to do is look for that change, understand what the change is. So in this case, what is the change? What is the change that's going to happen in the university?
The professor is retiring.
Are you sure? I mean, yes, that's happening, but is that the...
Yes. No, it is not the main reason. And the other, I think that the main reason was that fewer and fewer students are taking these sculpture classes.
Yes, that's correct, but I'm not asking for the reasons. I'm asking for the main idea in the text. What is this announcement about? What are they announcing?
The university are, oh, sorry.
No, perdón.
Okay, thank you. The university are closing the art department because they say that there is a lack of student interest in that, but actually there are too many students that are interested in taking these sculpture classes.
Where did you get that information that many students are interested in taking these classes?
In the part that it says, although the number of art students has increased, fewer and fewer art majors are taking sculpture classes.
Okay, but fewer means menos, right? Cada vez menos, fewer and fewer. Actually, art majors are not taking these sculpture classes.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, you're close. The announcement here, the change, the main idea is that the university is eliminating, is closing the sculpture program, not the art department, but the sculpture program. It says, university administrators announced that the sculpture program, a division of the art department, will be eliminated. That is the main and most important idea here, the change, the announcement, what the idea or the plan is. The thing is that this text is always going to be about a plan in the university, about a change and announcement. So in this case, the main idea, the main change is that they will be eliminating the sculpture program. Okay, guys, that is the first thing that you need to do when you read. Most of the time, this change will be in the first or second sentence. Okay, so you just need to read around the first and second sentences in order to find the change, the main idea. As soon as you guys identify what the change is, and believe you don't have to read everything to know the change. You just need to read the first sentences. As soon as you know what the change is, the first thing that you need to do this very quickly, is take notes, write down the change. So in your notes, you should be writing down a sculpture program eliminated. That's it. That is the most important thing to do when you read, okay? To identify the change and to take notes about it. Is that okay so far? Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Now, what you are saying is also true. Obviously, they explain more. So aside from the change, this is the first thing that you will always have in the text. But aside from that, you will also have always two reasons in favor of the change. Two reasons explaining why this change is happening or why this change should happen. You always have two reasons. So the first reason is what Noelia was saying, right? Why are they eliminating the sculpture program? Because only a few art majors take sculpture classes, or because there is a lack of students' interest, right? That is the first reason why they are eliminating the sculpture program, because they say that there's a lack of students' interest. What about the second reason? Why else are they eliminating this program?
Because the only sculpture professor is retired that year.
Exactly, great. The professor is retiring, so they won't have any other professor to teach the class, and that's why they have decided to eliminate it. Exactly. So those are the two reasons. The changes that they are eliminating the sculpture program. Why? Because of two reasons. Because there's a lack of students' interest and because the professor is retiring. Now, as I told you before, the main thing for you to do here is to identify the change and write it down. After you have the change in your notes, you can continue reading and you need to understand the reasons. If you have more time, you can take notes on the reasons, but that's optional. Okay, it doesn't matter if you don't have the notes, if you have your notes for the reasons. As long as you know what they are, you understand what they are, then it's okay. Okay, guys? That's what you guys need to do when you're reading. Do you have any questions about that? Is it okay?
In this type of questions, there are always gonna be a change.
Yes, there's always going to be a change here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other question? Thank you, guys. Now, after you do this, after you read the text for 45 seconds, you will have to hear the audio file. Now, what you guys are going to hear is a conversation taking place in the same university between two students from the university. So you're always going to hear two students that are going to be talking about that text you read, that announcement, that plan, that idea. So you'll always have these two students and you will always have a female and a male student. It's always female and male. And what happens is one of these two students, it could be the guy or it could be the girl, one of them will always have a strong opinion about the change, about the plan. This student could be against, could be like, that's a terrible idea. I don't think that they should eliminate the program. Or the student could also be in favor, be like, that's a great idea. I like what you're doing. You don't know, okay? But that's something that can happen. The student will always have an opinion though. And this student will explain his or her opinion. So we'll explain why he or she thinks that. Now, what you guys have to do, first of all, take notes, because you only get to listen to the conversation once. And second, well, then you have to do a couple of things. The first is identify who the main student is. You need to, as soon as you hear them speak, be able to identify if it's the female or the male student, the one that has the opinion. So who's the main student, the female or the male? That's the first thing you guys need to do. As soon as you hear them speak, you will know. And as soon as you know, you need to write down in big letters the pronoun in your notes. So if it's the female student, the one that has the opinion, you're going to write down the word she. And if it's the guy that has the opinion, you will write down he. Okay, that's really important because it's easy to get confused with the pronouns later. So first thing, identify who the student is and write down the pronoun. Now, second thing that you guys need to do is understand the opinion that this student has. So is this a student in favor of the change or against the change? That is the second thing you need to be able to do when hearing the conversation. And finally, and most importantly, you need to understand the two reasons that this student gives, because this student will give you other two reasons why he or she has that opinion, why he or she is against or in favor of the plan. So you need to be able to hear them, catch those reasons, and take notes, okay? Most of the time, these reasons will be related to the reasons you had in the reading. So if the university says that there's a lack of interest, the student will probably respond to that. If the university says that the professor is retiring, the student is very likely gonna talk about that. Okay, so it's like a response to this article. And what you guys need to do is just pay attention and take notes. Is that okay so far? Do you guys get the idea? Any questions before we hear the audio? Okay, guys, then please be ready to take notes. I'm going to play the conversation.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just upset about that article I showed you this morning.
Why? What's the big deal?
Well, as an art major, I think it's a big loss for the department. The university's got it all wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, the low enrollment isn't because art majors don't want to take these classes. Problem is, who has time to take them when there are so many other requirements?
I don't understand.
See, the classes they're eliminating are all optional. The required courses are mostly painting and drawing, and they take up all our time. What we really need are different requirements. Then art majors could take a better variety of classes, all the things we're interested in.
That makes sense. But the thing about the professor...
Well, that's true. But still, they're being drastic. If money's the problem, they could hire a part-time professor. Or most of the professors in the department have secondary fields.
Really?
Yeah. At least a few painting teachers are also great sculptors. I'm sure one of them could teach a class.
Okay, guys. So let's talk about what we heard. First of all, can you tell me if it was it the guy or the girl that had you eat?
The girl.
Exactly. So we're going to write down she. Now, second, was she against or in favor of the plan?
Against.
Exactly. So we're going to write down against. Now, can you tell me why? What was the first reason that she gives?
She said that the students wants to take the sculpture class, but there are too many requirements and they don't have enough time to take too many classes. But if the university changed the requirements, they will go.
Exactly. Yes, perfect. Exactly. So yes, she says that it's not true that they don't want to take them, that they're not interested. They want to take them, but they don't have time because of the requirements. So the university should change the requirements. Great. What about the second reason? What else does she say?
She gives an alternative about that, like hiring a part-time professor, or if a professor of that institution gives the class, because many professors has secondary skills.
Okay. Yes, exactly. So it's a response to what the university says, right? The university says, well, Also, the professor is retiring and it doesn't make sense to hire a new one just to teach a couple of students. But she says, well, if you don't have the money or the budget to do that, you can hire a part-time professor or ask another professor from the department to also teach this class. Exactly. Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, is there anything else that you guys want to add? Okay. Now the question is always going to be the same. The question is always the same, at least in this new version. There are no changes to the question. The question goes, the woman expresses her opinion of the change that has been announced, state her opinion, and explain her reasons for holding that opinion. That is the question. So if you analyze what they're asking us to do, they don't want you to just summarize everything. The question is not summarize everything you read and heard. That's not the question, right? The question asks you to focus more on expressing the student's opinion in a conversation and explaining her reasons, the reasons that she gives, right? So the focus should be on the listening, not on the reading. And I need you guys to keep that in mind. There are many students who make the mistake of speaking too much about the reading when they are not really asking about the reading. Okay, so you need to focus more on the listening. Okay, guys? Now, after you get the question, technically you have 30 seconds to prepare. Now, what you do, guys, during those 30 seconds depends on what you need to do, and it's different for every student. Some ideas. For example, in my case, when I was preparing and taking the test and so forth, my problem with the speaking section was that I used to take too many notes. I'm a fast note taker, so I write down a lot of things. And I used to take a lot of notes from the conversation. And when I was speaking, I wanted to say everything that I had in my notes. I was like, I thought that everything was important and I wanted to fit everything in the response, which is obviously impossible. So what I did during these 30 seconds was organize and classify the information from my notes. So I would maybe cross out a few details or ideas that I don't think were relevant. So if there was something that wasn't necessary to mention, I would cross it out. If there were details, I would cross them out. I would highlight or circle or underline the important ideas that needed to be there. And I would just work on my notes. That's one thing you guys can do if you struggle with having too much information, right? And you can classify your information very well. Now, other students, for example, like to rehearse. So as soon as they start preparing, they start rehearsing. 30 seconds is half your response. So you could technically prepare your first half of the response. You can do that if you have problems with articulating or like just expressing your ideas, coming up with good sentences. You can do that. You can rehearse. If you have problems with the grammar part, you know that you always struggle with conjugating the verbs, then you can start practicing, right? She says, she states, it will, let's say, right? You can start looking at the verbs and making sure that you can conjugate them well. If you have problems, let's say, if you're too nervous, maybe you can just take a moment to relax and do nothing. It works for some other students. So it depends on what you guys need to do. Okay, it's different depending on your needs, depending on how you work. So my suggestion is going to be try everything, try different strategies, and see which one works better for you. And I will also be giving you feedback when we practice. Okay, guys? Those are your 30 seconds to prepare. Any questions so far? Okay. Then you need to start speaking. And you have 60 seconds to speak. What are we going to do there? We're going to first have a template. This is your template. And it's very simple. Remember that you have 60 seconds to speak. Okay? So during the first 10 seconds, you guys need to have a short introduction. 10 seconds for your introduction. What are you going to do in the introduction? You're going to state the student's opinion, and you're going to mention the idea that changed the plan. Okay, how do you do that? You say, the student in the conversation supports or is against, depending on whether the student is against or in favor. The student in the conversation, in this case, we would say, is against the idea of, and then you mention the change. The student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. Okay, guys? That's it. That's your introduction. It should be no more than 10 seconds. And in order to get it into the 10 seconds, you need to practice. Is that okay so far? Any questions about this? One thing that I want you guys to consider, I'm going to say it in Spanish. Una cosa que es muy importante aquí en cuanto a la gramática y que he notado que muchos estudiantes cometen este error, seguido de esta preposición of, y en realidad de cualquier preposición, ya sea for, about, of, with, si van a usar un verbo, el verbo tiene que estar en forma de gerundio, es decir, con ing, ing. Entonces, mi sugerencia es cuando ustedes están leyendo el reading, el texto, siempre traten de encontrar el verbo principal. Siempre va a haber un verbo. Los cambios son acciones y las acciones son verbos, ¿no? Entonces siempre va a haber un verbo. Eliminar esta clase, añadir esta clase, contratar a esta persona, ofrecer este servicio, expandir, mejorar, cambiar la infraestructura, cambiar el menú. Siempre hay un verbo, siempre es un verbo. Entonces, traten de buscar ese verbo. En este caso, obviamente, es discontinue or eliminate, ¿no? Discontinuar o eliminar. Ese sería el verbo. Entonces, mi sugerencia, busquen ese verbo siempre para que ya lo tengan listo. Entonces dicen, the student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture course. Is against the idea of building a new library. Is against the idea of closing the cafeteria. I don't know. Okay, but you will have a verb. So careful there, that's grammar, but it's important. That okay? Any questions about that? Okay, guys, so that's your introduction. That's 10 seconds of your response. And then how many seconds would you have left?
$50.
Exactly. So 25 are going to go for the first reason and 25 will go for the second reason. And I'm talking about the students' reasons. I'm not talking about the university's reasons. Now, everything you just need to remember is the template. Because technically what you guys need to have is obviously a couple of transitions. First of all, in addition, you need to have the correct pronoun, she. And don't forget about this. I'm also going to say it in Spanish because it's important. You need to use reporting verbs. Necesitan usar este tipo de verbos para reportar ideas. Explains, believes, thinks, says, states, argues. Esos verbos tienen que estar en el presente simple. Es decir, no digo explained, mentioned, believed. No, digo explains, believes, says, thinks. Porque estamos hablando de opiniones. ¿Okay? Entonces, necesitan tener esos verbos, necesitan que estén en el presente simple, porque si no utilizan esos verbos, es como si se estuvieran robando las ideas. Si solamente dicen, first of all, students actually want to take these courses, but they don't have time. If you say that, then it's like you were saying it. It's like it's your idea. You're taking away the credit. But you can't do that. You need to report. You need to give credit to the student. She says that students want to take these courses. She says that they don't have time. She says that they should change their requirements. Okay? It's better not to repeat though. I'm not saying she says, she says, she says. She explains, she believes, she mentions, she argues, she claims, whatever. Okay, guys? So, is that okay now? Do you have any questions about this? Okay. You don't need a conclusion. So nothing else. You don't need anything else, to be honest. That's it. If you have extra time, you can go with a conclusion, of course. You can say something like, these are the two main reasons why this student feels this way. These are the reasons why the student doesn't think that this idea is gonna work, or whatever. You guys, if you happen to have extra time, if not, this is perfect. Is it okay now? Any questions? Okay, guys, I'm going to give you a sample response. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try so that you see how I manage my time, the things I say, the things I don't, my grammar. You already know what you should be looking for, right? Remember yesterday, well, I think it was on Tuesday, we talked about the way that they evaluate your responses, right? Things like delivery, the content, the time, coherency, if I'm being redundant or not, grammar, vocabulary, idiomaticity. So pay attention to those elements and see if you could do something different, if you could do something better, what you would do. Okay, guys, I'm gonna start now with the timer here. I want to okay, guys. The student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. First of all, she explains that it isn't true that students are not interested in taking this class. However, what happens is, she explains, that most art majors do not have the time to take optional classes, like the sculpture class they're eliminating. They have to take all the required courses that take up all of their time. Therefore, what the university should do, she says, is change the requirements. In addition, she believes that if money is the problem and the university is working under a limited budget, what they could do is hire a part-time professor. Or perhaps they could ask another professor from the university to teach this class, since most art professors have secondary fields and there are a couple of great sculptors as professors. Okay, guys? So as you can see, it's not too complicated. I try to manage my time in the way that I told you to, and it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes because I know that sometimes you will want to say more. Like, for example, in my case, when I was in the first reason, I wanted to continue, I wanted to go on explaining, but you need to be constantly looking at the timer and accommodating your response to the time you have. It's not the other way around. So it's important that you always, of course, you're looking at your notes, you're remembering, but you need to at least once or twice look at the timer, see how much time you have left. And yes, I mean, nothing else. One extra tip that I can give you is maybe try to connect the ideas. Make sure that every idea is connected. For example, I don't know if you guys noticed, but here, what you can do is try to implicitly mention the reason that was mentioned in the reading. So, for example, in my case, I said, first of all, she explains that it is not true that students are not interested, or it is not true that there is a lack of students' interest. What happens is that they don't have time. So when I say that, it's not true that I am implicitly, indirectly referring or talking about the reason mentioned in the reading. In that way, the connection is very clear, right? Every idea is well connected. So maybe that's a tip that I could give you. You can try to connect ideas. Same thing here. You could say, in addition, she believes that if the professor is retiring, or since the professor is retiring and they have a limited budget, they could hire a part-time professor, or right. So that way I am connecting everything, if you know what I mean. So maybe that's one tip I can give you. Another thing is careful with the grammar, careful with the verb tenses mostly, because in some cases you will have to conjugate the verbs in the future when you're talking about the plans for the future. In other cases, you will have to conjugate them in the present tense when you're talking about facts or opinions. So careful there. Okay, guys? Is that okay now? Do you have any questions now that you've also heard my response? Nope. Okay, guys. So let's do another one to practice. You guys are going to do it. Or if there's somebody that wants to try that, you guys will have a chance to try. And if not, we can do it together as well. Okay, guys, but let's see. Okay, guys. So this is going to be the question. Remember that you have 45 seconds to read the announcement. So please, you may start reading the text. Hang on, I'm gonna make this bigger. Okay. You can.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
So what do you think of the university's new plan?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work.
No?
I mean, I can't imagine top students being too thrilled about some of the conditions on this campus.
What do you mean?
Like the science laboratories having such old, outdated equipment, and the library needing more books, and the student center being so small. I think that the $2 million could be spent in better places if the university is really serious about achieving its goal.
Okay, but what about the other reason for building the stadium? I mean, right now we have so little contact with the town.
Yeah, but this won't help relations. Look, people from town hardly ever come to games because our teams always lose, and they're not suddenly going to improve overnight. Besides, adding seats won't make a difference. I mean, if people from town didn't come before, they won't come now just because the place is bigger.
Okay. Now the question says, the woman expresses her opinion about the university's plan, state her opinion, and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion. Now you will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So is there anyone who would like to try?
Okay, I can try, please.
Yes, first Laila, thank you. So you may go ahead now, please.
Okay, the student in the conversation is against the idea of building a new athletic stadium. First of all, she explains that there are too many places that are needed in the university, so they can spend all that money building other places like a library. And secondly, she believes that that the members of she believes that the local of the community, if they didn't go for looking playing at the team, so now that they can build another one, so there is no need because they always lose.
Okay, well done. Thank you so much. So that second idea maybe could have been a little bit better expressed. So if the locals didn't go to the games before, they won't go in the future just because they have a new stadium, right? So always maybe one idea I can give you guys is if you understood well the reasons here, and if the student is against, then it's always going to be the opposite. In this case, the reading says, it will allow the university to strengthen its relationship with the town. So you can say, in addition, she believes that building a stadium won't strengthen the relationship between the university and the town, since, I don't know, the team always loses, and that's why locals don't go to see the games. Maybe something like that. But overall, I think that was a great response. Really well done, Noelia. Starting from the way that you manage your time, I don't think you're gonna have any problems in terms of time management, because you were able to finish even before your time ended. You had a great introduction. Your first reason was really well explained. And I like the fact that you have both the general idea, there are other places where they could spend this money, and you have the details, like a library, for example. So I don't have any comments. Your grammar was also good. So no comments, really well done. Maybe just that expressing, talking about the ideas and that suggestion on connecting them. But other than that, I wouldn't really say or change anything from your response. Hold on. Okay, guys. So any questions so far? What do you think? Okay, then let's do another one. Let's do one more. Maybe we can search for one where the student actually agrees. Let's do this one here. Okay, guys, so it will be the same. Starting now, you guys have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
What do you think of the proposal?
I think it'll work. I mean, the range of the station now is basically limited to the campus, and so it's basically just a few programs, mainly for students.
Yeah?
Well, if this proposal goes through, there will be more programs, and it'll give the students more professional experience as they experiment with programming for a much larger, real-life audience. And stuff like that will give them a better shot at getting a job after they graduate.
Of course.
Besides, the whole university will benefit from it.
What do you mean?
Well, you know my friend Tony, right? He told me that the radio station at his university did something like this about 5 years ago.
And?
Well, it's a success. They are making a lot of money out of commercials, and they are using it to offer more scholarships and to help fund projects to renovate the facilities of other programs.
That sounds really good.
Now the woman supports the proposal described in the article. Explain why she thinks it will achieve the university's goals. Now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, so is there anyone else who would like to try?
Can I try?
Yeah, of course. So please start now.
The student in the conversation supports the idea of exchanging the radio. First of all, she explains that nowadays there are a few programs make it for the students, but in the future can be more. And it will be a good experience for the curriculum when the students graduate. And also she shared the experience of another friend that the university did something similar, and with the revenue that the university received, they give more scholarship and facility for the students. So this opportunity can be something good for all the university and not only for the students of communication.
Okay, perfect, Salma. Well done. Loved your response. It was a little bit different, but it was great because you kept the structure. You kept the introduction, the two reasons, the way you explained it was really good. The content was, completely accurate, well summarized, well explained as well. If you have some extra time, you can go maybe with a short conclusion. In summary, these are the two reasons the student gives for expressing his opinion or her opinion. And no comments. The only tiny detail maybe I could mention would be in the introduction. It's great that you have a quick intro, to be honest. That's something that some students struggle with initially. But don't forget to talk about the change. Give some context. You said she's in favor of the idea in the article, but maybe tell me what that idea is. She's in favor of the idea of expanding the college radio station or making changes to the college radio station. It's necessary to have that context because you need to think that somebody who hasn't read or who hasn't heard the conversation will listen to your response. So maybe that context and nothing else. Careful also with the tenses. In this case, we had an example in the past because she was talking about how her friend's university did something like that in the past. So careful in those cases. But other than that, I don't think I would change or say anything else about your response. Okay, guys, so what do you think now? Do you have any questions, any comments before we go?
In the test, can we back to the reading part? Or how it works in the TOEFL test, actually, this part?
Okay, it will be exactly like we watched in the video sample. So you can read the reading again. You just have it for the 45 seconds and then it goes away. It's gone. Then when you're hearing the conversation, you can just see a picture in the screen and then the question, but you can go back to the article.
Okay, and one more question. When we are giving the reasons about the statement of the person like she or he, we can explain about the reading or just about the listening. Like, I don't know if for in this example, the first reason of the change is that expand broadcasting range, for example. But one of the reasons that she gives is that okay, the student can be can have more professional experience, but it's necessary to talk about why, because there are expanding a broadcasting in this.
To explain why, I mean, you mean the explanation that the student gives in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's necessary to explain in more detail the listening part. So yes, that's why in this template you always have reason and then explain the reason. So for example, as you said, first of all, she explains that expanding the range of the station will benefit communication students. Okay, that's the reason, but why? Because this will allow them to have more experience with a real life audience, and they will have a wider audience from, I don't know, coming from other, from the local, let's say. So yes, it's better to explain why, not to over explain it when not necessary, but to say something would be a good idea. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other question perhaps? Okay, guys. So then in that case, please don't forget to fill out today's daily survey. It should be on your screen. And I will be seeing you guys next class next week. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. See ya.
See you.
Thanks to you.
Bye, guys.